Tate Chronicles now transmitting.
Welcome to the Tate Chronicles on Healthcare Now Radio. And now, here's your host, Jim Tate.
Good day, citizens of the free world, from border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea, I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning in today to the Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. My guest today is one Mr. Jeffrey Sullivan. Jeff is the Chief Technology Officer at Consensus Cloud Solutions. Consensus provides products and services that support the sharing of health information. Jeff, welcome to the Tate Chronicles.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
This year, there are several significant events that are hopefully bringing us closer to the widespread exchange of healthcare data. We've got the FHIR standard requirement coming, a deadline end of this year. And we also have regulations to prevent information blocking. Those are just a couple of issues that are providing support to the goal we all seek, which is actionable data for healthcare delivery and support for appropriate public health policies. Now, Jeff, I know at Consensus, you're very involved in what I call the evolution of health data, because we're moving from legacy foundations of paper-based systems to digital documents, and then the holy grail, those discrete data elements that we need. But we find ourselves in a mix of data sources that include unstructured items like lab reports and referrals and PDFs. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how Consensus helps providers meet that challenge of unstructured documents and interoperability. So let me ask you this first, Jeff. I was there when fax machines first entered the realm of private practices. When data first started being, or documents, clinical information started being faxed around, I guess that was interoperability 1.0, and we thought it was miraculous that we could get that information like that. So we've come a long way since then, haven't we?
We sure have. So it's funny, when you talk about ways to exchange data and facts, a lot of people don't think about those in the same message. But I think that's the interesting challenge. A lot of people still use fax. I remember when I first joined Consensus, and when I was speaking with our head of the company at that time, I was working at a company that did patient relationship management and things of that nature. And he reached out to me and he said, we have a lot of faxing going on. And my question was, people still use fax? And he laughed and he said, just only, trillions and trillions of pages of faxes going on a regular basis, around the world. And it's an interesting question as to why, but, faxing being that unstructured data, as is, to your point, reports coming in, PDFs coming in, is a real problem in healthcare today, especially when we think about healthcare data interchange and interoperability. Well,
certainly documents or reports or however they come in the traditional, what we think of as faxing, which is a machine that prints out a piece of paper with information on it. And so that certainly can be scanned or imported in some way into an electronic health record. But that data by itself is not connected to other data.
That's right.
And so I don't know when it was. Maybe you can tell me that we started getting away, hopefully, a little bit from the faxing and ended up with a hard copy to some type of digital fax, almost like an email.
Sure. So Consensus Cloud Solutions is also one of the early providers of cloud fax technology or digital fax technology. And that was a big advancement over paper fax, right? Paper fax, and depending on how old school you are, you can remember back when fax machines didn't even print out pages of paper. It was on a roll of paper, and it would scroll out with the data, and then you'd have to cut the page and cut the page and cut the page off that roll just to get your fax together. But you're right. Back in the day, that was kind of miraculous that you'd have this information coming to you in near real time from, across the state or across the country. But, around about 15, 16, 17 years ago, the evolution of fax into more of a digital technology really started to evolve. But I'll tell you, for the beginnings of that period, it was really just a function of taking those, dots on a page and making them dots in an image file. And that has been the nature of digital fax for probably the next decade and a half. But over the past 5 years or so, I'd say we're really seeing an evolution in the way that digital fax, is starting to be used and perceived within workflow. So, over the past 20 years, fax has gone from something that was extremely difficult to work on to something that's been less challenging to work on. You can start to feed those documents, those digital documents, automatically into a document management system or into your EHR in some rough ways, but you still end up with a lot of workflows where the nature is I received this document and either, it was pieces of paper that are dropped on my desk, or even if it's in a document that's been scanned in, my workflow still involves somebody in a clinical environment or a business environment rekeying that information into some other system of record. If you're dealing with paper documents, you can get misplaced pages, documents that get lost from place to place, a lot of challenges that go through it. And of course, whenever you're talking about a workflow that involves some form of manual intervention, you've got a scenario where your business processes that require timely activity can be impacted. And that may be delays in critical care responses. It may be issues with getting stuff put into a system that is needed by a clinician to deliver care. It can be responses on authorization. So for all of these reasons, you really want a system that is more of that, that thing that we come to think of when we think of interoperability, which is data gets from point A to point B seamlessly and fluidly. And that's something that has evolved over time, but really still has a little bit of a way to go. And we're really seeing kind of a golden age resurfacing with cloud fax and really any kind of digital unstructured documents starting to come into their own as first-class citizens in these kinds of interoperability workflows.
I'm thinking back to the early days of documentation of immunizations and vaccinations, maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And of course, every state has its own immunization registry, and some large cities have their own. And the documentation of a specific immunization for someone, I'm not sure how they did it, but it was probably paper-based. And I don't know if they were then mailed in or faxed in. And of course, some of them now are involved with a immunization file coming out of an EHR to a registry, or at probably some areas, providers have to go to the specific registry's website and enter that kind of information. So there's still a lot of mix in how this happens. We really saw this trying to identify all the types of data around COVID, who had COVID, who'd been immunized, all that stuff. So even if the electronic side of things is addressed totally, there's still some very complex workflows. But so let me ask you this: if I was going to see a provider and I scanned a document, a PDF or whatever I did, and sent it electronically as an electronic document, but it's literally an image file or a PDF or something like that. How does that get turned into structured, discrete data, a diagnosis, the medications, with the codes behind it, so it can really be actionable data? How can that occur?
Absolutely. And that's critical. And I think, Jim, you hit the nail on the head when you said that while COVID didn't necessarily create any real change in the world as it existed, it really highlighted a lot of the challenges that the state of the art in healthcare technology, is sitting at this current point in time. And I remember a story, probably late 20, where there were regional health offices, regional offices of the CDC that were struggling to get accurate counts on COVID because they were getting these piles of faxes handed to them with all of these, immunization reports and illness reports and intake reports, and they were having to rekey all of it. And it's just that perfect example. Would it have been materially different if somebody had scanned in paperwork from all the different offices and clinics? And, we had a whole vaccination clinic set up in Dodger Stadium out here in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff is paper. And then they feed it in. Some of them have tablets, but all of it is in this situation where you've got this unstructured data. And one of the things that's really been an amazing evolution over the course of the last couple of years is really the kind of coming into its own of the family of advanced technologies around kind of AI. So artificial intelligence and natural language processing, or NLP, machine learning, and then things married to that like optical character recognition, optical mark recognition. And all of these things really come together to form a cluster of capabilities that was discrete and did kind of specific pieces of work in the past, but you really didn't get them kind of melded together into a cohesive solution. These days, what's happening now with these unstructured documents is you have a collection of tools that fit together in kind of a cleaner family or internal workflow to allow you to take unstructured documents and render them back out into a structured format that's much more like HL7 messages, FHIR components or FHIR messages, containing components, or even, direct secure messages with attached envelopes that have a lot of interesting healthcare metadata attached to them. And what these technologies allow us to do is to take that information that's coming in some unstructured way, and instead of simply, plopping them on a desk or in a work queue somewhere that needs to be requeued or manually routed, or any of these types of processes that basically produce bottlenecks, you're able to use these technologies to actually, extract the raw content that's in there, process that in a way that was really very difficult to do in a commercial sense even 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, and now start to extract meaning from these documents and then do something with that meaning to allow more straight through automated processing. So I would say that, in my mind, this is artificial intelligence kind of coming into its own. It's not, a robot sitting in a corner diagnosing cancer necessarily, but what it is taking these documents that have a lot of manual labor attached with them and getting them to be more clinically useful in a much more expedited way. And I would say probably that's a little less sexy than, the robot, doing all of these crazy things. But what it really does is it enables a lot of great outcomes in healthcare and really takes a lot of these things that require massive amounts of documentation and moves that data, that information around in a more fluid and flexible way to enable better outcomes, to smooth out workflows, and really to allow these large and complicated healthcare organizations, especially ones that have connections to other organizations, either in the community or satellites and whatnot, and allows them to start communicating much more efficiently and effectively in a way that is kind of living in that digital realm completely, rather than having these pieces where they drop down into the physical and have some form of manual intervention before they go back into the digital realm and move forward again. So I think that's been that cluster of technologies around AI and NLP and ML. Those are the things that have really changed a lot and really become very, I would say, commercially viable over the past handful of years.
Let me give you a scenario, and I'd be curious to your responses to it. If I'm a patient and I've been recording and I'm diabetic, I've been recording maybe my hemoglobin A1Cs or my blood sugar level or something like that, and I haven't entered it into, as patient-reported data into maybe my patient portal, but I've just done it as a document. Mm-hmm. And I have that document on my computer. So theoretically, would there be some type of email address that I would send that document to? I mean, it depends on workflow, different practices, but what are the different ways that would work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One of the key factors in real interoperability, as I like to call it, is you need to meet the patients, meet your healthcare partners in the healthcare ecosystem, meet them where they are, and then take them where they need to go. And so from this perspective, if somebody needed to email something, you need to be able to provide them with a secure way to email sensitive information. If they're comfortable uploading a document to a website, you need to give them a secure portal to get that loaded in. And there are also quite a few apps or tools that they can use to be able to extract that data and load it up into the system. So I think the answer is it depends on what they're comfortable with, what they have access to. But even if the scenario here is, if this person's in a rural setting, they don't have a lot of access to technology, and they're keeping a diary, of readings or anything like that that's going on, you need to have some way to get that properly digitized and then extract it into structured knowledge, and put into the EHR, the diagnosis systems, the dispensation systems, all of the things that are necessary. And there are an array of technologies available to help patients do this these days.
Sure.
And I think that you need to just look at all of those opportunities. But ultimately, no matter how that comes in, except if it's been entered directly, to your point, into a measurement or symptom capturing device or mechanism or system, it's going to come in some form of unstructured nature that you need to then convert that by extraction and analysis into the structured format that you're looking for, and then ingest that into your EHR or other healthcare IT system that is looking for that data in that structured format.
I appreciate what you say, Jeffrey, about meeting people where they are. Everybody just about has a phone that has a camera built in, and everybody knows how to take pictures. So people are going to want to take pictures with the camera and send it to their provider, whether it's of a list or that can be structured data, or whether it's an image they're capturing of some skin condition, all kind of things like that. So, I guess it's the concept that we have to build and adapt to what people want to use and are using.
Absolutely.
But, one issue, when these faxes come in, since it's very difficult to do patient identification, how are they connected to a particular patient's record?
Sure. So this is an area where you get very interesting results. So a lot of times if you're talking about fielding, say, fax documents as an example, scan documents would work as well, that are medical reports or medical records, within those documents, there's always some form of identifying information. But depending on the form, depending on where it came from, it may be on page 1, page 2. There's a lot of interesting, challenging information that a human being is actually very good at skimming through a form and saying, here's the patient, here's the provider information, and here's, date of birth, medical record number, problems, allergies, incidents, all of these things, right? This is where technology has gotten much better in the past couple of years than it was before. Used to be, the answer to that was sit it in some form of transcriber's desk, have them transcode that information into the system, and you'd be good to go. These days, whether they're taking a picture of a document they got from their doctor, whether that has handwriting as well as printed text in it, the technologies now exist to be able to extract that data, turn it from that unstructured data that's been extracted via a camera, via a fax machine, via a scanning device, and turn that back into structured documents. In addition, in that structured data, you've got things like I've recognized semantically, this is the patient name, date of birth, address, medical record number. Here are the treatment details that I need to put out there. Maybe prescriptions, maybe it's diagnoses, maybe it's the outcome response for a request for prior authorization. These kinds of semantic extractions of data is what you get with this latest generation of language processing tools laid on top of what we had kind of in the last generation, which was just text extraction tools. And so that next generation of laying on top of the I've gotten the raw text into a format that anybody knows how to search through and print out and whatnot, to saying now I've taken that and I've parsed that, I've pulled it together, and I can now say what it means, what this document means, what kind of document it is, who it relates to, all of that. That's really the next great advantage, because so much time is spent indexing documents and figuring out who the patient is. And there are vast teams in many of these large HCOs just processing these documents and attaching it to the proper patient. My company does some of this kind of stuff. And, one of the things that we find is that a huge value add is simply streamlining the process of flowing that information through and getting it properly tagged to the record in the EMR related to the patient, saying what it is and what the basic information is. And that alone, as simple as that is transformational in terms of how efficiently they can process through. And as this evolves and gets more and more comprehensive and more detailed, you'll be able to do more and more of that extraction through the application of natural language processing and machine learning models that extract that data and put it into, kind of machine indexable, actionable format. And I think that, Jim, you'd mentioned earlier how things like, FHIR as a standard is a very nicely indexable, a nicely machine readable format, but how that ties to things like anti-blocking rules and saying this data has to become addressable by distribution to various participants in the healthcare IT ecosystem, and it needs to be distributed in a machine readable way, right? That's part of the regulation, is that information, you can't just ship somebody a stack of documents or even a stack of scans. You have to give them something in a machine-readable format if that's accessible. That's where these latest generations of technologies really come in and start to lay that meaning on top of the unstructured data that you've got.
For our audience members that have just recently joined us, this is Jim Tate at the Tate Chronicles. I'm speaking with Jeffrey Sullivan today. Jeff is the Chief Technology Officer at Consensus Cloud Solutions, and we're discussing unstructured documents and the challenge related to that and interoperability. So Jeff, at Consensus Cloud Solution, who are your customers and what do you do for them?
So at Consensus Cloud Solutions, I would say the way that we think about things is really, our mission as a company is to be, our mission statement is to be the trusted global source for the transformation, enhancement, and secure exchange of digital information. And I think that every word in there is very carefully selected. We focus on being able to transport information from place to place, especially information that has some form of document orientation, and be able to enhance that to improve outcomes. I would say a majority of our business is in healthcare, but it's not solely in healthcare. We also do business in financial services, in legal, in manufacturing. And I think what they all have in common is that they have very specific, highly technical content that needs to be passed around. It is critical to the business functions that they're serving, and it is very important that information is transmitted securely and effectively and efficiently. And that's what we provide, is a suite of offerings that allow us to securely transfer that data, and during that process, properly enhance it for better processing, better use, and better outcomes. And this is especially true in healthcare, where getting that information properly addressable and indexable in automated workflows is just one of the foundational challenges in interoperability.
Well, and it's not only about direct patient care. That's certainly a big part of it, but we've got to get all that data to make informed decisions on public health policy. We've seen that over the last few years. If we don't have that data to make good decisions on, suffering takes place. There's no doubt about that. Where can our listeners go if they want more information about the solutions offered by Consensus?
Well, I think that the easiest thing you can do is check out our website. It's consensus.com. So not spelled any funny way, just consensus.com. That covers all of the various offerings that we have, and is a great introduction to not only the things that we do, but also the way that we think about things. And there's a lot of good documentation there around our opinions on how to advance interoperability, both in healthcare and in healthcare-related industries. And also, easy to reach out to us if you need to get any more information.
Your largest segment, obviously, is in healthcare. So I imagine that means you've gone through the high trust certification, which is really the highest level of security for health information.
Absolutely, Jim. We consider high trust to be essential. You're talking about exchanging crucial data where privacy, security, these factors are never more important than they are today. And, for us, high trust is just a fundamental tool in the trade of making sure that we're doing everything we possibly can for our customers.
Well, great. Well, to our audience, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. I offer a special salute to my guest today, Jeff Sullivan of Consensus Cloud Solutions. Jeff, thanks for coming aboard today.
Thank you for having me.
You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.
Tate Chronicles transmission ending now.